Sometimes, the scariest thing about living alone isn't what you can see, it's what you can hear, what you feel, the presence you can't explain, and when you finally get answers, you realize you were never really alone at all. I moved into my first apartment when I was 23. It was a small ground-floor unit in an old brownstone in Philadelphia, in a quiet neighborhood just outside the city center. The building had character-high ceilings, original woodwork, creaky floors, the kind of place that felt lived in, like it had stories to tell. The landlord, an older man named Gene, seemed friendly enough. He showed me around, pointed out the radiator quirks, the window locks, the usual stuff. Then, almost as an afterthought, he mentioned the basement. "There's storage space down there," he said, gesturing to a narrow door in the hallway. "But you won't need it. It's sealed off. Just old junk from previous tenants." I didn't think much of it. I didn't have much to store anyway. I signed the lease that afternoon. The first week was uneventful. I got used to the sounds of the building, the hiss of the radiator, the footsteps of the tenant above me, the hum of the refrigerator. It was peaceful. I liked living alone. But on the 8th night, something changed. I was lying in bed, scrolling through my phone, when I heard it. Footsteps. Not above me, below me, directly beneath my bedroom floor. Slow, deliberate, paced footsteps, like someone walking back and forth. I froze, listening. The steps continued for maybe 30 seconds, then stopped. I told myself it was pipes. Old buildings make noise. It was nothing. But it happened again the next night. And the night after that. Always around the same time between 1 and 2 a.m. Always the same rhythm. I tried to ignore it, but the sound started to get under my skin. It didn't sound like pipes. It sounded like someone pacing. One night, I woke up to a new sound. Scraping. Metal on concrete. Harsh, grating, coming from directly beneath my bed. I sat up, heart pounding, and listened. It went on for minutes long, drawn-out scrapes, then pauses, then more scraping. I grabbed my phone and thought about calling someone. But who? The landlord? The police? What would I even say? The scraping finally stopped around 4 a.m. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, I knocked on my neighbor's door. Mrs. Alvarez was in her 70s, had lived in the building for decades. I asked her casually if anyone had access to the basement. She gave me a strange look. "The basement? Honey, no one's been down there in years." Jean sealed it up after what happened. "What happened?" She hesitated. "A tenant died down there, back in the 70s. They found him weeks later. Jean doesn't like to talk about it." I felt my stomach turn. "So no one has a key?" "Not that I know of." I called Jean that afternoon. He sounded annoyed. "There's no way anyone's down there. The door's been locked for decades. You're probably just hearing the heating system." "Can you check?" I pressed. "Please, I just need to know." He sighed. "Fine. I'll come by tomorrow." The next day, Jean showed up with a ring of old keys. We stood in the hallway in front of the basement door. It was old, painted over multiple times, with a heavy deadbolt. He tried 3 keys before one finally turned. The bolt slid back with a rusty groan. He pushed the door open. A wave of cold, stale air rolled out. "Stay here," he said. He descended the wooden stairs, flashlight in hand. I waited at the top, heart hammering. I heard his footsteps echoing below, then silence. Then he called up, voice tight. "You need to see this." I went down. The basement was unfinished concrete floor, exposed beams, cluttered with old furniture and boxes. But in the corner, beneath a small window, there was a clear space. A pile of old coats, arranged like a bed, empty food wrappers, a flashlight, a plastic water bottle, and dozens of photographs, scattered on the floor. Jean picked one up, then another. His face went pale. He handed them to me. They were pictures of me, taken through my bedroom window. Me, getting ready in the morning. Me, sitting on my couch. Me, asleep in bed. I felt the room tilt. Jean was already on the phone with the police. I looked at the window, the one above the makeshift bed. It faced the alley. My bedroom window was directly across. You could see right in. The police came. They dusted for prints, took the photos, asked questions. They told me someone had been coming and going through that window for weeks. No sign of forced entry into my apartment, but they'd been watching me the whole time. They never found out who it was. I moved out 2 days later. I still think about those footsteps, the scraping, the photos. Whoever it was, they were so close, just a floor below me, watching, waiting, and I never knew. To this day, I can't sleep on a ground floor apartment, because I'll always wonder, what if they're still down there? Working alone at night changes you. The silence becomes heavy. Every sound feels louder. And when something breaks that silence, something that shouldn't be there, you realize how vulnerable you really are. I took a job as overnight security at a medical research facility just outside Portland. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid well and the work was easy. My shift ran from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. The building was large, 5 floors, mostly labs and offices, but after 8 p.m., it was supposed to be completely empty except for me. My job was simple. Monitor the camera feeds, do hourly rounds on each floor, log anything unusual. The first 2 nights were quiet. I brought a book, made coffee, watched the clock. It was boring, but that's what I wanted. Easy money. On the 3rd night, around 2 a.m., the desk phone rang. I stared at it for a moment. No one had ever called before. I didn't even know the number. I picked it up. Security. Silence. Then, faintly, breathing. I waited a few seconds. Hello? Still nothing. I hung up. Immediately, it rang again. I answered, more annoyed now. Hello? This time, a voice. A woman's voice, faint and distorted, like it was coming through a bad connection. Are you alone? I felt a chill run down my spine. Who is this? Are you alone? She repeated, a little louder. Yes. There was a pause. Then she said, very clearly, good, stay in the office. The line went dead. I sat there, staring at the phone, heart pounding. I checked the caller ID. It just said, Internal. I pulled up the camera feeds on my monitor. All 5 floors, hallways, labs, stairwells. Everything was empty. I cycled through every camera twice. Nothing. But then I saw it. On the 3rd floor hallway feed. A shadow just for a second crossing the frame near the elevator. Too quick to make out. But it was there. I rewound the footage. Watched it again. The shadow moved from left to right, smooth and fast, then disappeared. My next round wasn't scheduled for another hour, but I decided to check. I grabbed my flashlight and radio, took the elevator to the 3rd floor. The ride up felt slower than usual. When the doors opened, the lights were off. That wasn't normal. The hallway lights were motion activated. They should have turned on. I stepped out, flashlight sweeping the hall. Nothing. The air felt colder here. I walked slowly, checking doors, all locked. I reached the end of the hall, near the lab where I'd seen the shadow. The door was closed. I tried the handle, locked. Then I heard it, humming, a woman's voice, soft and tuneless, coming from inside the lab. I stepped back. My radio crackled with static. I tried to call the main desk. Nothing but white noise. The humming stopped. I turned to leave, and that's when I saw her. Reflected in the window behind me. A woman, standing right there in the hallway. Long hair, pale face, hospital gown. I spun around. The hallway was empty. I ran. I didn't stop until I was back in the elevator, slamming the button for the ground floor. My hands were shaking. I radioed again, still static. The elevator doors closed. I watched the floor numbers drop. 3rd floor, 2nd floor, 1st floor. The doors opened. I bolted to my office, locked the door, and didn't move for the rest of my shift. At 6 a.m., the morning supervisor arrived. I told him what happened. He looked at me like I was insane, but he agreed to review the footage with me. We pulled up the 3rd floor cameras from 2 a.m. onward. Nothing. No shadow. No movement. Just empty hallways. But then he paused the feed. What's that? On the timestamp, right when I'd been standing in the hallway, there was a figure behind me in the frame. Blurred, but visible. A woman in a hospital gown. He went pale. That lab, he said quietly. A researcher died in there. 5 years ago. Suicide. She used to work the night shift alone. I quit that morning. I didn't even finish the paperwork. I just left. I don't know what I saw that night, or who called me, but I know one thing: she didn't want me on that floor. And whatever the reason, I'm glad I listened. We trust strangers every day. We let them into our cars, our homes, our lives. Most of the time, it's fine. But sometimes, you realize too late you've let in the wrong person, and they've been watching you the whole time. I have a brutal commute. 2 hours each way, 5 days a week, from the suburbs into the city. Gas, tolls, time, it was killing me. So last year, I started using a carpool app to save time in the HOV lane. You pick up passengers along your route, split costs, cut your commute by 30 minutes. It seemed like a good idea. I matched with a guy named Martin. Mid-40s, quiet, worked in the city. He had good reviews on the app, reliable, respectful. We set up a routine. I'd pick him up 3 mornings a week at a gas station off Route 9, drop him off in a residential neighborhood near his office. He'd pay his share through the app. Easy. Martin was fine. He didn't talk much. We'd listen to podcasts, sometimes the news, but mostly we just sat in silence. He was polite, always on time, never caused any trouble. After a month, he was just part of my routine. Then one morning, he wasn't there. I waited at the gas station for 10 minutes. Texted him through the app. No response. Finally, I just left. I figured he'd overslept or found another ride. It happens. That night, I got a notification from the app. Martin has been removed from the platform for violating community guidelines. I frowned. That was weird. But I didn't think much of it. People get kicked off apps all the time. The next day, I saw his face on the news. Martin had been arrested for stalking. He'd broken into a woman's home 2 towns over, hid in her basement for hours before she found him. The police said he'd been watching her for weeks, following her, taking photos, learning her schedule. She had a restraining order against him, but he'd violated it. They found maps, surveillance photos, pages of notes about her daily routine. My stomach dropped. I sat there, staring at the TV, and that's when I remembered something. The address I'd been dropping Martin off at, it wasn't an office building. It was a residential neighborhood. He'd always get out at the same corner, wave, and walk off. I'd never questioned it. Why would I? I pulled up my dashcam footage. I keep a camera running while I drive, just in case. I scrolled back through the last month, finding clips of Martin. Most of it was boring. Him getting in, sitting quietly, getting out. But then I found something. In one clip, after I dropped him off, he didn't walk to a house. He just stood on the sidewalk and watched my car. He stood there, completely still, until I turned the corner and disappeared from view. In another clip, I caught him taking a photo of my license plate as he got out. I felt sick. I kept scrolling. There were more. Little things I'd never noticed. Him writing in a notebook, glancing at my GPS screen, asking casual questions about where I lived, where I worked, what route I took home. Then I looked up the address of the woman he'd been arrested for stalking. Her commute to work? The exact same route as mine. I called the police, gave them my dashcam footage, my app records, everything. They told me Martin had been using rideshare apps to stalk multiple women. He'd get rides with them, learn their routines, figure out where they lived. I'd been driving him to her street 3 times a week for a month. He'd been using me as his cover. The detective said I was lucky. Martin had notebooks full of names, addresses, photos. Some of the women he'd been watching for over a year. I deleted the app. I don't carpool anymore. And every time I see someone standing on the side of the road, I get this feeling in my chest like they're watching me, waiting. I think about him sometimes, sitting in my passenger seat, quiet, polite, harmless. And the whole time, he was taking notes, learning, planning. I still check my rearview mirror more than I used to, because you never really know who you're letting in. Grief is a strange thing. It makes you see patterns where there are none, hear voices that aren't there. But what if the voice is real? What if the person you lost is trying to reach you? My mom died suddenly last April. A stroke. No warning, no symptoms. She was 59. Healthy, active, always on the go. I was overseas for work when it happened. By the time I got the call and booked a flight home, she was already gone. I didn't get to say goodbye. The funeral was small. Family, a few friends. I went through the motions, accepted condolences, sorted through her things, helped my dad with paperwork. I felt numb, like I was watching someone else's life. A week after the funeral, I was cleaning out her bedroom. My dad couldn't do it, he'd just sit there, staring at her clothes. So I did it. I went through drawers, closets, old boxes, and in her nightstand, I found her old cell phone. It was an outdated model, something she'd stopped using a year ago when she upgraded. I figured there might be photos on it, maybe old messages I'd want to keep. So I took it home, plugged it in, and let it charge overnight. The next morning, I powered it on. The screen lit up. One new voicemail. I stared at it. The timestamp said 3 days ago, 3 days after she died. My hands started shaking. I opened the voicemail and pressed play. Static at first, then a voice. Her voice, faint, confused, like she was far away. Hello? Where is everyone? Why is it so dark? Then the line cut out. I dropped the phone. My heart was hammering. I picked it up again, hands trembling, and played it a second time. It was her. I knew my mother's voice. The way she said, hello, the slight rasp she had in the mornings. It was her. I checked the call log. The voicemail had come from her own number. The same phone I was holding. I didn't know what to do. I called my dad, but I couldn't bring myself to tell him. I called a friend who works in tech. He came over, looked at the phone, listened to the message. He said it was probably a glitch. A delayed message, maybe something cached in the network that got sent after her death. Phones do weird things sometimes. He couldn't explain the timestamp, though, or how the message came from the same number. I kept the phone. I didn't tell anyone else. I just kept it in a drawer and tried to forget about it. But then it started ringing. The first time was 2 weeks later. I was lying in bed, almost asleep, when I heard it. That old ringtone she used to have, a generic chime. I sat up, confused. The phone was in my dresser drawer. I pulled it out. No caller ID, I answered. Silence. Then, very faintly, breathing. Hello? I said. Nothing. I hung up. My hands were shaking again. It happened again a few nights later. Same thing. No caller ID. Silence. Breathing. And then, just before I hung up, I heard it. Her voice. Barely a whisper. Can you hear me? I dropped the phone. I didn't pick it up. It kept ringing after that. Once a week, then twice. Always late at night. Always the same. Silence. Breathing. Her voice asking if I could hear her. I stopped answering. I tried turning the phone off, but it would turn itself back on. I thought about destroying it, but I couldn't. It was the last piece of her I had. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I drove to a park, walked to a trash bin, and threw the phone away. That was 3 months ago. But sometimes, late at night, I still hear it. That ringtone. Faint, distant, like it's coming from another room. I get up, check my own phone. Nothing. I check every room in my apartment. There's no phone. But I hear it. And I know, somewhere, she's still calling. I don't know if it was real. I don't know if I was hearing her, or if grief just broke something in me. But I do know this: sometimes, late at night, I still listen. And I wonder, if I'd kept the phone, would she have said more? Would I have heard what she needed to say? I'll never know. And that's the part that haunts me the most. There's something primal about being watched. That feeling on the back of your neck, the sense that you're not alone. Most of the time, it's nothing. But sometimes you're right. And the proof is staring back at you. I hunt on my family's property in rural Montana. 200 acres of forest, hills, and meadows. It's been in our family for 3 generations. My dad taught me to hunt there when I was a kid. It's peaceful, isolated, quiet, miles from the nearest road. Last fall, I decided to set up a trail camera to scout for deer before the season opened. I placed it along a game trail near the northern edge of the property, in a dense section of woods. The camera was motion activated, set to take a photo every time something passed by. I left it there for 2 weeks. When I came back to check it, the SD card was full. Hundreds of photos. I took it home, excited to see what I'd caught. I scrolled through the images on my laptop. Most of it was exactly what I expected: deer, a fox, some birds, a raccoon. Standard wildlife. But then I got to the night shots. The first one stopped me cold. A man, standing directly in front of the camera, staring into the lens. He was filthy. Torn clothes, gaunt face, wild hair. His eyes reflected the camera flash like an animal's, pale and empty. The timestamp said 3:47 a.m. I stared at the image, heart pounding. Who the hell was this? I clicked to the next photo. Taken 10 seconds later, he was closer. Next photo. Closer. Next photo. His face filled the entire frame. Eyes wide, mouth slightly open, staring. I felt my stomach turn. I grabbed my phone and called the sheriff's office. I explained what I'd found, sent them the photos. A deputy came out the next day. We hiked to where I'd placed the camera, searched the area. No footprints, no campsite, no sign anyone had been there. The deputy said it might have been a homeless drifter passing through. But that didn't make sense. The nearest road was 8 miles away through rough terrain. Why would anyone be out there? He took the photos, said he'd look into it. I moved the camera to a different location, closer to the main trail. 2 days later, I went back to check it. Same man, same sequence, standing, staring, moving closer. But this time, in the last photo, he was holding something, a picture of my house. I felt the air leave my lungs. I zoomed in. It was a printed photo, slightly crumpled, but clear. My house, taken from the driveway. I called the sheriff again. This time, they sent 2 deputies. They combed the entire property, set up patrols, found nothing. I didn't go back out there. I was too shaken. My dad thought I was overreacting, but I couldn't shake it. The way the man stared into the camera, the photo of my house. It felt deliberate, like a message. A month later, my dad went out to retrieve the camera. He said I was being paranoid, that it was probably just some squatter who'd moved on. He came back that evening, white-faced. He handed me the SD card without a word. I opened it on my laptop. There was only one photo on it. A picture of me, asleep in my bed, taken from outside my window, from the night before. I stared at the screen, hands shaking. The angle was from ground level, looking up through the glass. My bedroom, my bed, me, completely unaware. We called the police. They dusted for prints around the window, checked the property again, installed motion lights. They never found anyone. But I know he's still out there, watching, waiting. I don't sleep in that room anymore. I keep the curtains closed. And sometimes, late at night, I hear something outside. Footsteps in the gravel. A branch snapping. I'll get up, look out the window, and see nothing. But I know he's there. I can feel it. They say the woods have eyes. I used to think that was just a saying, but now I know better. Something's out there. Someone. And he knows where I live. I don't go out to the property anymore. I can't. Because every time I think about those photos, his face, my house, my bedroom, I realize he was never lost. He was hunting. And I was the prey.